So for today, we're going to be using the Superstore dataset that we set up in the last meeting. Okay, so whenever you open your MySQL Workbench, you will need to select the connection. Okay, and you want to select a default database to work with. Okay, so to select the default database, we just use the keyword use and then the name of the database, Superstore. Okay. And for each query, make sure you have the semicolon at the end, right? Just like the period at the end of each sentences. Okay, so we're going to run this query. And the way you can run this query is either by clicking on the execute button that looks like a lightning bolt. Okay, or you can use Control Enter or Command Enter if you're using Mac computers. Okay. And once again, if you are running a command, you should see an output that appears at the bottom, right? So make sure that there's a green check mark. That means the command has run properly. Okay? If you see an X check mark, you want to look at the messages, right, to see what is going on. All right. So we're going to start with some basic commands, and then we'll work our way up. Okay. So for this first thing that we're going to do, we're going to select all the columns from a table. So with a new database, you always want to check what tables you have. To do that, you would look at show tables. Okay. And when you run this command, you give you an output with all the table names. Okay. So let's say I want to select all the columns from the customers table. Okay. So to do that, I will just use select star from the name of the table, customers. Okay. Now the star is a wildcard character, right? So that means anything that matches. Okay. So here, since there's nothing around our star, it means every single column in the table itself. Okay. So let's run this command. Okay. And you can see that we have the customer ID column, the customer name column, the province column, the region column, and also the customer segment column. Now, of course, with a big table, you don't want to look at all the rows, right? Especially if you just want to peek at what the table contains. Okay. So to limit how many rows you have, at the end of your select query, you can add the keyword limit, okay, and just give it any number. So let's say I want to just see the first 5 rows. So the limit statement is very important, especially if you're dealing with a big data set. Okay. If it's a very small data set, so let's say around 100 rows or maybe even 1,000 rows, right? It's okay to run it without limit because your computer can handle that. Okay. But with the big tables, you do want to add limit, right? Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time with your computer. Okay. So for those of us who just joined us, right? So we are using the Superstore dataset that we set up from last time. Okay, and we're running our first query to select all the columns from one of the table in our database. Okay, and we just talk about limit, which means you are limiting how many rows you want to show. For the editor, I am using MySQL Workbench. Okay, but I think any MySQL editor would work as well. Okay. A lot of companies do use MySQL Workbench because it is one of the most popular one. If you like, you can also look into DataGrip, okay, which is a JetBrains editor. Okay, but for data grid, I believe you do have to look for a license. Otherwise, there's no free trial, or after the free trial, you cannot use any. Okay, so my suggestion for those who are learning SQL is to just download my SQL Workbench and install it. Right, this will be free. Okay. So again, this is a select and the limit command. Right, usually when you are peeking into the database, you want to run a command similar to this. Okay, so select star, so you can see all the columns in the table. Okay, give the name of the table after from keyword. Okay, and just give a small limit. Right, so 5 or 10 or 20, depending on how much you want to look at. Now, of course, with the select command, we can also pick the columns that we want to look at. Now, right now, I'm going to switch the lingo at this time. Okay, so in SQL, right, we don't really refer to these as columns. The proper term is fields, right? So columns are referred to as fields. Okay, so the proper terminology here is fields. So I'm going to switch the lingo from columns to fields from now on. Okay. For the Superstore database, you would need to look at the kind of previous video that we posted for the data set. Give me one moment. Okay, so for the data set, you can get it through the Google Drive link that I'm sharing in the chat. Okay. Right. So to select the particular columns, or sorry, the particular fields in the table, okay, instead of using select star, you would just type out the name of the field that you want. Okay, so for example, if I want to select the customer ID field and also the customer name field, okay, I can just do select customer ID and customer name from customers. Now, the case doesn't matter when we are working with SQL, right? However, in your display, right, your field name will match the case that you wrote in the select statement. Okay. So pay attention right now in our output, right? Customer ID has a capital C, capital I, and capital D. Okay. But in my select statement, I use all lowercase. Right? So I run this command, right? I still get the correct output. However, now the name of the field matches the case I typed in. Okay, so in SQL, the case doesn't matter; it's not case sensitive. Okay, but your output will look like the case that you typed in. Okay, so if you use all uppercase when you type out the name of the field, then in your output, the field will also have all uppercase as well. Now, with a table, we can also make some filters. Oh, so if I were to change, let me change the second one into all uppercase, right? So you will see that the name of the field would just become uppercase. Okay? But the data that we get will still be consistent with the data in that field. Yes, so it's not case sensitive. Right? The only thing that would matter to you is how you want it to show up in your output. Okay. All right, so continue on. Okay. Let's say we want to find particular records in our table. Right? So I'm going to take this example here. Okay. So in our products table, we want to see which products have a product-based margin greater than 0.8. Okay. So first thing we can do is peek into the table itself, right? Since we're not familiar with the table yet. So we can do select star from products. Okay. And again, limit, let's say 5. Sorry. From what happened here? Oh, I forgot the period as well. Sorry. Forgot the semicolon, right? So you can see what happens if I forgot the semicolon in the previous command to MySQL Workbench. It thinks that this entire thing is one command, right? So you need to put semicolon to tell MySQL that one command has ended and the other has begun. Okay. So in my products table, right, I have my product ID, my product name, okay, the product category, product subcategory, the product container, and also the product base margin. So instead of looking at all the records, I only want to show the records where the product base margin is greater than 0.8. Okay. So to do this, I can do select star. So let's say I want to grab all the column, all the fields, okay, from my products table. Okay. Now I want to do a filter based on this field itself. So I will use where product base margin is greater than 0.8. Now, again, just greater than means it's exclusive, right? So it's only numbers that are bigger than 0.8. If you want to be greater than or equal to, you would just add the equal to after the greater sign. So I'm not sure if there is one. Yeah, there is one here. Okay. Now, I used 2 different ways of writing the query as well, right? One way I wrote the query in just one line. Right? The other, I used multiple lines to write one query. So I would say it's suggested for you to start using multiple lines, right, as a code block of code to write your query. Because this way, it's a bit easier for others to read your code as well. Okay. So the way we would separate our code, we have a select in one statement or one line, okay, our from in the other line, and then our filter in the third line. Right? So this way is slightly more readable than doing it in one line. Okay. And also, if you put your code always in one line, right, your code tends to get longer and longer and longer. So you would have to kind of scroll back and forth, which is not really desirable, right? So using multiple lines for your code will make it better. Now for the filter clause, we can also filter based on a string, right, and not just on numbers. Okay. So let's say we want to look at what is the customer ID and customer segment of Aaron Smith. Okay. So to answer this question, we're going back to our customers table. So we can select customer ID, customer segment, okay, from our customers table. Where the customer name, right? So we want to be is Aaron Smith. So here we use equal instead of the inequality signs. Okay? And for strings, we will use the quotes. So Aaron Smith. Yes, so you can use single quote or double quote. I would say the only time you have to use double quote is if your string contains an apostrophe, right? So if your string has like a like Aaron Smith's, right, possessive, then you would need to use double quote. Otherwise, to SQL, right, it looks for the other single quote to end the string. Okay? Otherwise, you can use single or double quote. So that will be up to you. Now, with the filter clause or the where statement, we can actually have multiple cases or multiple filters, right, put into the same query. So here, let's look at this example here. So I want to select all the printer, right, where the product name contains printer, okay, that have a product-based margin greater than or equal to 0.4 and less than or equal to 0.6. Now, the key of this example is that our product name contains the word printer, right? Unlike before, where we know that the name of the customer is exactly Aaron Smith, right? Now we say that in the product name, there is this word printer somewhere in the name. So let's actually answer this first part first, and then we'll add in the second condition. Okay. So I want to select all the printers from my products table. Okay. So I can do select star from products. Okay. Now, if I just type in where product name equal to printers or equal to printer, right, I'm probably not going to get many results or no result at all, right? Because now it's saying I'm looking for the exact match of a printer. Right? So that's why you see there's no result in my output. Okay? But I just want to see all the products that contains the word printer. Okay? So I need to, instead of equal to, use a parcel match. So to do the parcel match, I use the keyword like. Okay? And in my string, I would use a wildcard. Okay? But the wildcard is not the star symbol. Here, the wildcard is the percentage sign. Now, the placement of your percent sign matters as well, right? So by placing the percentage sign in front of the word printer, it's basically there can be anything in front, but you'll end with the word printer. So if I run this, okay, you see that in the results, all of them end with the word printer. Okay. Now, if I were to put this percentage sign at the end, okay, so there's nothing here, but what I'm saying here is that the string starts with the word printer, and you can have anything following it. But let's say I just know that the product name contains printer. It might be at the beginning, it might be at the end, but it can also be somewhere in the middle. So to account for that, I would just add another percentage sign. So one in front, one at the end. Right? Now it's just saying that as long as this word printer appears somewhere in the product name, I'm going to take that in my query. Right, so somewhere in my product name, right, I'm going to take that in my output. Okay. So using the keyword like, right, with the percentage sign in the string, is looking for a partial match. So you know part of the string, you don't know the entire string. So that is the first half of this sample. Okay. Now for the second half of the example, I want a base margin greater than 0.4. So I don't want these ones, or greater than or equal to 0.4, right? And less than or equal to 0.6. Okay. So to add the second condition in my where statement, I can just use the keyword and, right, and add in the condition. So product base margin greater than or equal to 0.4, okay, and product base margin less than or equal to 0.6. Now, one thing you notice about this code at the moment is that in my filter, right, I'm filtering based on one column on a range. So instead of one value, I'm filtering on top of a range. Right? Now, if for a range, I had to write the name of the column multiple times, right, that gets tedious, especially if the name of the column is very long. Okay? So instead of writing it out like this, okay, I can actually shorten this by using the between keyword. Okay? Now with between, I will give a lower bound, so 0.4, and an upper bound. Okay? So using the between keyword is the same as having two conditions, one for the less than equal to, and one for the greater than and equal to. But one thing you need to know is that the keyword between is inclusive. Okay? So by using between, we are including the lower bound and also the upper bound. Okay? So if the question just says greater than 0.4, right, then between is not the correct way to go. Right? You could just add, let's say, 4.1, for example, right, to counteract that. Now, with our statements, we can also sort our result. Okay. So I'm going to take the same query. Okay. And let's say I want to sort my result based on the product ID. So I can just add another statement after the filter using order by. Right? So with order by, I need to give the name of the field. So product ID. And by default, order by sorts the results in ascending order. If you want to sort in descending order, you would just add after the name of the field, the keyword DESC for descending. Okay. So again, order by default is in the ascending order. Okay. And if you want to sort it in descending order, you can just add the keyword DESC for descending. Yeah, so default order is ascending. Okay, so default is ascending. Okay, so smallest on top or A on top, right? And then you can add DESC for descending. So now the biggest on top or Z on top. Now, in order by, you can also sort your result by multiple columns as well. Okay, so I'm going to pick the product-based margin just because there is few repeated ones. Okay, so let's say I want to sort by the product-based margin. Okay, so you see there's a few repeated ones, right? And I can also sort it by the, let's say the product container. Okay, now for each of these sorts, I can determine whether I want to be ascending or descending. Okay. So again, by default, each of these order by is in ascending order. And the way it works, right, you sort by the first column. And if there's any duplicates, then you will sort by the second field. Okay. So if I were to change the product-based margin, right, to sort in descending order, I would add DESC behind the product-based margin. And you can see for my product container, it is still in ascending order, right? So it does not affect each other. Yeah. So right now it's in descending order. And again, by default, product container is in the ascending order. Okay. Similarly, okay, so right now our product-based margin is in ascending order. I can also sort my product container in descending order. So you can see here now for the same product-based margin, right, the letter of the alphabet is on top. Now you could also add the keyword ASC for ascending, okay? But because by default it is ascending, right? So this ASC is kind of implied, so you don't really need to add it, right? You could add it for clarity, right? To explicitly tell your reader that product-based margin is sorted in ascending order, while the product container is sorted in descending. Okay? But practically, right, by running the code, ASC is not really required. Okay. Okay. So any questions about what we talked about so far? So we talked about the select, we talked about the limit, we talked about some filter statements, okay, especially with the parcel math. Okay, and here we talked about the order by. Okay, next, let's look at some built-in functions that are embedded in SQL. Okay, so let's start with the string functions. So the one I think might be a bit interesting. Oops, sorry, forgot to leave this a comment. Find distinct year from orders using the substring. And I'm going to do this again using the datetime function later on, right? But let's say I don't know that there is a datetime function, right? All the field, right, even though they have different data type, we can still work with them as a string. So a string is kind of like a universal data type that you can work with, right? Even if the data type is defined as something else. Okay? So let's first peek at the orders table so we know what we're working with. Right? So we can do a select star from orders, limit 5. Again, I like to choose the number 5. You can choose 10 or 20, depending on you. Right? So here we have a lot of fields to work with, and they have their different data types. Right? And I see that there's an order date. So I want to get the distinct years, right, based on this order date column. I believe in SQL, the default is using limit. There is no, I know for sure there's no tail, and I haven't really tried with random. So usually we just peek at the table using the first few rows with limit. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, okay. So let's select the order date, right, just by itself, so we can examine it more closely. Okay, so select order date from orders. Okay. Now my order date column is technically in a datetime format, okay, but I'm going to work with it as a string. And in SQL, the way that string is indexed, right, character by character, it starts with the number 1. Okay, so for those of you who are used to languages like Python, right, you know that it's 0 index, which means the first character in a string has an index of 0, right? But in SQL, and I'll put this on here. Okay, so SQL is 1 index, right? So it starts with 1. Okay, so if we look at the string, right, we have 2009, so character 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The dash is character 5, and then 6, 7 for the months, right? The next dash is 8, and then 0, 4, right? 9 and 10 for our date. Okay, so with that said, we can select the year from our order date field by using our substring. Okay, and the way that substring works, so substring, okay, this is a built-in function in SQL. Okay. With substring, we first put in the name of the field that I want to work with. Okay. Then we give it the starting index. Right, so we want to start with the year, right? So start with the first index. Okay. And the next thing we want to put in is how many characters we want. Right? So we want the year, so we want a 4-character substring. So we put 4. Yeah, so SQL is 1 index, meaning that for all these strings, the first character has an index of 1, right? So the way it numbers the characters in a string, right? It starts with the number 1, then it goes on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So in our, I'm going back here, in our order date, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Numbering the string. I just mentioned that in Python, right? Python is a 0 index language, which means that it starts not at 1, but at 0. Right? So let's say if this table was in Python, right? Then this 2 character has an index of 0. Okay? Whereas in SQL, this 2 character has an index of 1. So when you hear someone say SQL is 1 index, it means it starts with the number 1 when it's numbering the characters in a string. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you always start with 1, right? Whereas Python, you start with 0. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now that we filtered out the years, right? They're not distinct, right? Because we see some repeated years. Okay? So to get a distinct years, we just have to add the keyword distinct in front. Okay? And now you can see that we don't have any repeats. So the keyword distinct is the same as unique, right? So by adding distinct in front, we would have it this way. What is it there? Yeah, so I think in SQL, the way that it works is years and then months and then day. Yeah, so I think it might be a standardized way in the programming language. There are ways for you to convert, right, from, let's say, months, day, year, right, to the other different types. Okay. Right. Now, I want to change something with the substring, because this example, some students that I had in the past gets kind of confused, especially by the third parameter, right? It's a way that they remember, and this is incorrect, right, is starting and ending, right? But the correct way of remembering substring, so substring is field starting index and then links, right? Not the ending. Okay. So let's say instead of looking for the years, I want to look for the distinct months. Okay. So again, I'm just going to select the order date from orders. Okay. And now I want the months instead of the year. Okay. So if I want to do that with substring, okay, I would select substring order date. Okay, I want the starting index. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, starting index is 6. Okay, and then I want the length. So how many characters I want? So I want 1, 2, right, including the starting index, okay, from orders. So in the substring, the second number is the length, how many characters you want. So I would think this example better demonstrates substring than the year example, right? Because you might get confused. Now, like I mentioned, since our order date column is in a datetime format, we can actually grab the year or the month or the day by using the datetime functions instead of treating it as a string. So I'm going to use datetime functions to get the year. Okay. And to do that, I'll just select the year. So again, a built-in function. And then the name of the field, so order date from orders. Right? And again, if I want to look for distinct, I will just add the keyword distinct. So the datetime function only works if your column is in a datetime format. Right? So let's say, for example, you import your datetime column in a different format that's not recognized as datetime, right? SQL will save that as a string, right? Or if you define it as datetime, you might get like a error message, okay? So if you change it into the proper format that SQL recognizes, or you could use the datetime function itself. Okay. Now, before I get to the different datetime functions, right, I just want to show you two other string functions that could be useful in your work. Okay. So the first function I want to show you is the replace function. So I'm just going to select the product name from the products table. Okay, so here you can see that I have some like double quotes, right, in some of the strings. Okay, how does SQL show year from this? So let's see if I can show you a widescreen. It will be a very quick visual because I'm not good at drawing. But basically in your daytime column, so daytime field, okay, the format will be year for 4 years, and then months, and then day. So the built-in year will just look at the 4 years itself. Okay, so you look at the string. First, you notice that it is a daytime format. Okay, and then you just kind of grab the first 4 characters. Okay, same thing with, let's say, the month function or the day function, right? You look at the string, or you look at the field, you know that it's daytime, right? Then you just grab the place where months will be and where days will be. Right? So that's why SQL requires you to fit into one format, because these built-in functions, yeah, they're kind of prearranged. So for the setup, I do believe we have the videos from last few sessions. You can refer to from our YouTube channel. I'll try to find the links later on to send it to you. Okay. All right, so going back here to the replace function. Okay. So let's say I want to replace, right, or take away all of these double quotes, right? I can use the replace built-in function, right? And replace works with strings, or technically it will work with everything, right? Everything can be treated as a string. Okay. And the way replace works, we had to first put in the field name, right? So our field here is called product name. Okay. Then as a string, right, we want to say what we want to replace. So here, since I want to replace the double quotes, right, I had to wrap the double quote around with single quotes. So it's a bit harder to see in this case, right? I had to delete the space, otherwise it's looking for the exact match, right? Space, double quote, space, right? So I'll try to send it in the chat. Maybe it will be displayed a bit better. Nope, doesn't work. Okay, so basically it's one single quote, and then a double quote, and then another single quote, right? To say I want to replace the double quotes in my string. Okay. And then for my third parameter, I had to tell it what do I want to replace it by. Okay. So let's say I want to replace the double quotes with, let's say, a dash instead. Okay, so pay attention to the double quotes or the name with double quotes. Okay, so when I run this, you see, oh, yeah, you see here, right? So the double quotes becomes dashes. So double quote here, it already exists in the column, right? So right now I'm saying I don't like the double quotes. I want to replace with something else. Okay, and then to replace double quote, you will need a single quote, and then double quote inside, and then another single quote to end the string. Now, if you want to just delete the double quotes from the string itself, right, you still use the replace function, right? But basically you want to replace with nothing, right? And to indicate nothing in your third parameter, you just put nothing in between the two quotes. Right? So two single quotes right next to each other, there's nothing inside. So this acts the same way as a deletion. Okay? But if you do add a space, it basically replaces it with a space. Again, this works with any character, right? So I just picked double quote to show you the example with the first few lines. Okay, you can try this with other characters as well. No, so all these queries do not change the data in the table, right? All these queries are only temporary. Okay? If you do want to change it, you do have to kind of save it as a different table, okay? Or alter the table. Okay? So the best the best use of replace, I would say usually is you find like a common mistake somewhere, right? So let's say the only example I can think of, right? If someone was putting in let's say a phone number and they typed a letter wrong, or they constantly use let's say dashes, for example, right? So some phone numbers will be, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, right? And if you don't want the dash, you can replace it. Yeah. So usually replace is used for that case. I think I haven't tried with null because the double quote is a bit easier, I would say. Let's try with null. Oh, so now we just kind of take the whole thing and change it to null. So now it's not a good idea, I guess. Right. So if you want to just delete the character, just use two quotes right next to each other for deletion. So whatever you are doing here doesn't change the original table, right? So your table's data is saved. All you're doing is just kind of getting a result, right? So you can make mistakes, but and you would never change the original table, right? All these are temporary. Oh, so what did null do? So null basically just found the string or found the character and just replaced everything with null. Because null is kind of saying that this string should be empty, right? So it looks for that and replaces with null. And then because it has a null, you think that this entire string is empty. Oh, how do we replace the mistakes, restore the mistakes? Because these queries are temporary. Yeah, so it doesn't change. It doesn't change the table itself. Okay. The only way we can change the table, I don't think we have enough time to talk about that today because it's a bit advanced. But you can use alter table to change your table, right? Or you can save your query. So let's say this is my final query. You can save it as a different table by using the create table statement. Okay, but all the queries that we're doing would not change the original data. Yeah, or update. Yes, update. Update will just make that small changes in the table itself. Okay. There's also insert. Again, we don't really have enough time to talk about all those statements today. Okay. We do encourage you to kind of join us for our course so you can see how the more advanced SQL queries are run. All right. So the other function that I wanted to show you is the trim function. Okay. So the way that trim works, it only looks for the leading, meaning the beginning, and the trailing or the ending characters. So in this replace, sorry, let me change this back into the null or the delete, right? Even the double quotes inside the string are deleted, right? Because for replace, it looks for every matching pattern in the second argument, right? And replace it with the third argument. But with trim, you only focus on the beginning and the end of the string. So if I were to select trim, and the way trim works, we had to tell it. Sorry, there's some so trim has 3 types. So there is leading, trailing, and both. So leading is the beginning, trailing is the ending, and then both is both beginning and ending. Okay. So with trim, we had to first tell it which one we want, right? So let's say both for now. Okay. Then we say which character we want to trim out. Okay, so let's say I want to trim out the double quotes, right? So it'll be the same as the replace. So a single quote with a double quote inside and another single quote. Okay, so I want to trim the double quotes from both the beginning and the end. Okay, then I have to say from which field. So from the product name, okay, and then from my table products. Okay, so you can see here the middle one still stays. Yeah, so let me put this in brackets. So leading means the beginning, trailing means the end, okay, and both is both. So trim only works on the beginning or the end, or and the end, right? Depending on what you input. So if you put leading, okay, it doesn't really show. Yeah, so it wouldn't change the one at the end, right? And if you put trailing, it will not take the one at the beginning. Right? And even with both, again, it just touches the beginning and the ending. It doesn't touch anything in the middle. Now, one other thing I want to mention was replace and trim, right? The strings that you're looking for, they're looking for the exact pattern. So what I mean by this, let me look at the original column first. Let me just cut this away. Right, so here I have 3 double quotes. Okay, let's say in my replace, instead of 1 double quote, I put 2 double quotes. Right, so it's looking for the exact pattern. It's looking for 2 double quotes to be replaced. Okay, so for the 3 double quotes at the beginning, you see that 1 will still remain. Right, so whatever you're trying to replace here is the exact match. Okay, for the last here, yeah. So here, all I'm saying is in my products. Sorry, let me just put the product name together with it, so you have a comparison. Okay, so in my product name, right, I have beginning double quotes and also ending double quotes, right? With trim, I'm just saying delete the beginning and ending double quote, but leave whatever double quote is inside the string alone. Right? So with trim here, you see the beginning is gone, and you see that the ending is gone. Okay, but the one in the middle will still exist. Okay? But again, this is the exact pattern, right? So if you just put 1 character, it's looking for every case of the character. If you put 2 of the same character, it's looking for those 2 right next to each other. Okay. Okay, so for since we have okay, if I want to replace 4 double quotes, so if you put in 4 double quotes in here, basically it's looking for a pattern that is all 4 double quotes. Okay, so whatever pattern you put in here, yeah, is find the exact pattern. And so it's not replacing 4 double quotes, it's replacing a group of strings that is all double quote, 4 of them together. Okay. Right now, due to the time, I'll show you two more things, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you are two. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. What question do you have for the trend? Oh, if you use so we use two. Okay, so it's a bit hard to see. So it's one single quote, and then a double quote, and then single quote. So we're trimming the double quote that's inside. Right? If you were to put, again, it's a bit harder to see because of the quotes. If you were to put just two double quotes next to each other, it's trimming nothing. Oh, so if you have two double quotes inside, yeah, so it's looking for a pattern of two, right? So in this case, it's looking for a pattern of two. So the single double quote at the end will be ignored. Okay? With both, it's saying both beginning, so only look at beginning and only look at the end. All right, so again, I'm just going to quickly show you two more things for today, and then we'll call it a day. So let's look at the day of week and the day name functions. So both of these two are daytime functions. Right? So by looking at the year, months, and day, you can actually go through kind of like this internal calendar, right? And give you the day of week. So let me just select the order date from the orders column for this table, sorry. Okay, and now let me apply the day of week on order date. Okay. So you see here, with day of week, it gives you these numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 7. Now, the only problem with looking at day of week is you don't know how it's masked, right? It's one Sunday, it's one Monday, right? How it is masked. So I prefer to use day name on the daytime column, right? And you'll see that one is Sunday. Right? So day name will actually give you the name of the day of week, whereas day of week just give you the numbers. Okay? So there's these two functions that both exist. If you're not used to the day of week yet, right? So you don't remember that one is Sunday, two is Monday, and so on. I would say run them together, right? So that you get used to them. And then once you get used to them, you can just choose what's helpful. So I think the logic is if you look at the calendar, right? For each week, right? The first column is Sunday, right? So the Western calendar, right? The first column is Sunday, right? And then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and so on. Okay. Yeah, so on the calendar itself, right? So if you look at the calendar, the first column is so on. Yeah, so if it says 1 in their week, it is Monday, right? And then 2 is Monday. I'm going to try something. I believe there is a weekday as well. So weekday is 0 indexed, right? But it starts with Monday. So 0 is Monday, and then 6 is Sunday. Okay. Again, if you're not used to the numbers yet, always run it with the day name, right? So you can get to remembering the association. Okay. So day of week and day name. How does the order they pick out the result? Oh, so it takes the year, month, and day, and kind of goes through its own kind of internal calendar, right, to find out the day of week. Okay, so it's not just giving a random guess; it's kind of going through as the calendar. So if you actually look this date up, it should be a Sunday. So day of week, I think day of week is used most often because in data, you want to use as many numerical columns, right, over the string columns. Because with numerical column, you can do a bit more manipulation than the string itself, right? But I would say again, start with using day of week or weekday together with day name, so you can understand the association and memorize that before you just stick with one of them. Now, the last thing I want to show you is giving this column a new name. Right? As you can see with our queries from before, right, the name of the column is basically the string that we have, or sorry, basically the function that we have here, right? So going back here, right, my product name is because it's product name, and then this field is this entire thing. Now, if you're used to the query, you can understand what it's talking about, right? But let's say you're creating a report, you don't want to show this as your field name, right? You want to give it a different name. Okay? So to rename your column, you can use an alias. Now, there's two ways of giving an alias to the field. Okay? One way, I would say, is more recommended for those who are beginning to learn about SQL, okay, is to add the keyword as. Okay, so I'm going to rename the trim function as, let's say, no quotes. Okay, so after the keyword as, I give it a new name. Now this has to be one word, or if you want multiple words, add a underscore, right, connecting them together. Okay. So for those of you who are new to SQL, if you're giving aliases, right, keep this word as, right, so you know that this is a function, this is the alias, and this is another field. Okay? So it's easier for you when you are looking back in your code. No, so again, all these queries doesn't change the table. Okay? It only changes the output. So these queries or these outputs only last as long as your session is still running. So if I shut down my computer and log on again, I need to rerun these queries to get the output, right? So they are not saved anywhere on the server or on your computer. Yeah. Okay. So these are only temporary tables that you see here. Okay. Now, the other way of giving aliases, and some of you may see this more often if you look through other people's notebooks, is just by using a space and typing out a string. And so for the trim, let's say trim. Right, so renaming this field from this entire function to trim. But once again, for those of you who are starting with SQL, I would recommend you to keep adding this keyword as. So when you're reading back, you know that this is the same field, only you're giving a different name. Right? But once you're used to it, you could skip this word as and use a space, right, to give it a different name. And to grab another field, you would just add a column, comma behind it. Okay. So these aliases are used more often, right, than not, because most of your output, you wanted to have some meaningful title for the field. All right, so give me one moment. I'm just going to grab the links. But in the meantime, any questions about what we went through today? Okay. Select, okay, yeah. So here, select order date. Oh, sure. Let me actually cancel this output so you have more space. Again, these three are built-in functions. Right? We're not going to have enough time to discuss user-defined functions in SQL. But if you like, feel free to message us and we can send you some materials. Again, I'm just trying to get the links. Yes, I do teach the SQL bootcamp. So for our bootcamp, we have the full-time bootcamp and part-time bootcamp that teaches not only SQL, but also Python, machine learning, deep learning, big data. Okay? But we also do have just specialized bootcamps as well. Okay? So here are the links for you. Sorry, I shouldn't have copied the first part, but that's fine. So we have the Discord, the WeCloudOpen, the YouTube channel where we'll upload these videos. Okay, and then for bootcamp, the last link here. Okay. All right, so once again, just sending the links again for those of you who haven't got it. So if you have any questions, feel free to join our Discord channel. Okay, we will try to respond to your comments or questions as soon as we are able to. Okay, and again, the videos will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. Oh, Discord link is okay. So, okay, give me 1 second. Send me an email to my email address, okay, so that I have kind of a contact list. Okay, I will send a new Discord link to you later on. Okay, so sorry about the expired Discord link, but if you have any questions, send me a email to my email account, and I'll send you a new Discord link for you to join. All right, so thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time out and joining me this evening. Okay, I will stay on the line for a few more minutes if you have any other questions. Other than that, feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to talk with you. Okay, have a good